Hey everyone, welcome to another episode from Ampro Engineering. I would like to call this a buyer's guide, but I kind of hesitate to do that because this doesn't run and I can't be bothered to record this one because it's just, there's tons of screws missing. I just don't have it in me. So I don't want to create a new series. We're just going to call this a buyer's guide light. The reason I wanted to do this video was just kind of show some interesting things from the 1980s through the 1990s on some of these older Nikko products because they're quite interesting and I don't think enough people know really that much about these, including myself. So first things first, we're going to see that these trucks have the Toyota Hilux body. And it's one of those cases where a lot of people think, oh, well, Nikko just copied Tamiya because Tamiya had the bruiser. But I don't really think it's that cut and dry because there's actually images of this truck here with a bruiser-like paint job, but this truck actually came out before the bruiser. So I don't know if those are modeled on some other vehicle or how that worked. I wouldn't flat out call Nikko someone copying Tamiya because really they're both Japanese companies. This body style Toyota Hilux was very popular back then in the 1980s. So, it's one of those cases where they designed what people wanted. Well, look at this little guy here first. This is not the smallest version of this truck. There's a version of this with significantly smaller wheels and tires, and it's actually quite a pretty vehicle. I believe it was fully proportional. This one I don't think is. I don't believe it's this one is four-wheel drive, but it does lack any kind of suspension. So you see nothing really moves. We have diffs, no rear diff, and we have a front diff. Is that right? So really no rear diff, but we do have a front diff. I believe we have low and high here in the bed. Oh yeah, that's very low, and that is very high. So here we have the motor at the rear. It's a fairly good sized motor. Is that a 380 Mabuchi? I don't know, but what I can tell is that in here, the motor is mounted to a transmission plate that appears to be a gigantic heatsink. These are the kind of details that you won't find in modern consumer grade RC cars. Back in the 1980s, these were fairly expensive toys. I suspect that a Grasshopper would be quite a bit cheaper than this vehicle here. This is a shaft drive, four-wheel drive vehicle. And again, I do apologize that I'm unable to test the operation of this vehicle, but I am fairly certain that what we are looking at here is a proportional RC car. It is being powered. Let's pop this thing open. Is that, oh my goodness, look at that. Two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. So we can drop this into two-wheel drive. Okay, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize that. The belly's actually in quite good shape underneath here. Let's open this up, see what we've got in here. And we've got 4 C batteries and 4 AA batteries. The AA batteries are most likely to run the radio gear and the servo, whereas the C's are there to run the vehicle. And here is our very chunky power switch. Look at these huge pot metal knuckles. That, again, is one of these details that you won't see on a lot of these more modern, inexpensive RCs. Get the idea that consumer grade RC cars are cheap out of your head because this, I guarantee you, was not a cheap vehicle. I do have the front panel of this. I think it's in one of my storage bins, but I do have that panel. I remember in the early 90s going to Toys R Us, which is what we had here in the United States, and seeing the Scorpion 3 in a display case. I believe it was red, but I saw the body and I thought it looked fantastic. This is the standard Scorpion, which has the exact same body as the other Hilux we looked at. However, you have this slightly obtrusive supercharger in the hood, which, I guess depending on the look you're going for is pretty cool, I guess. This is perhaps a bit large and excessive. What's cool about this body is that we can pull this off, and it's designed to do this. It has these little clips. So I think only one left. It's the factory little plastic body clip. This power switch is here protruding through the bed. And what we're looking at here is, a crystal. There used to be a crystal in there. We'll have to see if we can get this going. We appear to have some kind of speaker area, and perhaps there was some sound kit that was available on a variation of this. And you're going to see with a lot of these repurposed vehicles from the 1980s and 90s is that they tried to get a lot of mileage from the truck. So this may not have been used on this Scorpion, but it may have been in another car. Nikko made these for a lot of companies. So Radio Shack made this version. Tandy had it. I would imagine that there's other brands as well. So you've got all this kind of big chassis, but what I wanted to point out, and those of you who've seen the earlier buyer's guide on the Nikko Rhino will remember that this is a Nikko Rhino chassis. There are some differences. The Rhino has 4 AA's that go here, which control the radio gear, but this car doesn't. This car runs directly off the main pack. And there are some other cost-cutting measures, like I believe there is, the bumper's missing here, so there's a couple things missing there. I don't know if these, oh wow, yeah. These wheels and tires are removable. There is a little nut in there. These tires are in really, really good shape. We do have, this shock has come off at the rear. Oops, let's kind of keep that together, shall we? But we do have, let's come off two. We have two rear shocks, theoretically controlling the rear. And this is just like, yep, this is just like the Tamiya Grasshopper where it just pivots. There's no articulation. And at the front, two shocks here as well. In terms of their feel, the front feel is pretty good. Perhaps a little bit stiff, but not so bad. The rear would be a little bit more difficult to ascertain as obviously it's broken. We do have a 540 motor here, and it looks like if I see through this, we can look into the PCB in there. I don't know how well you can see it, but if this whole lid does come off, you would have access to the electronics. With the Scorpion, we are looking at a significantly more price-reduced RC car. This one here had a lot of, I wonder how much these weigh. Oh my goodness. This is a lot heavier than this car here. Let's see who weighs more. All right, we will set the can on there and zero it out. We'll set this truck on it. And we are at 3 pounds, 10 ounces, or 1,640 grams-ish. We'll put this one on. And we were at, wow, that's 4 pounds, 4.5 ounces, or 1,942 grams. Wow, this is, yeah, they got a little more bulk on it, despite the fact it's quite a bit smaller. Now, the radio for this car looks like this. Pretty generic. A lot of Nikkos have them, obviously, Radio Shack, the Golden Arrow. They're all pretty much the same radio. This little guy here, I just want to kind of point out how well Nikko modeled things. They did a very, very nice job with the grille. Look at the little cross-hatching details there. It does not say Toyota here, probably for legal reasons. Flipping this over, you can see that these lenses are transparent. In fact, on this truck, there is lighting. On this vehicle here, we do not see any provisions for that. But yeah, their detail was always really nice. You got your hood vents there, doors, door handles, all the little side vents. Oh, apparently these stacks used to be on this side too. Back of the truck. The back is a little bit lacking. I think the proportions are incorrect, but the front, they've done a good job with. I would call this probably 1/11th, maybe 1/10 scale. Really, it depends. If you compare this to the Tamiya High Lift, it's way smaller. But if you compare it to the Tamiya Blackfoot, it looks about right. Now remember that this truck, according to Tamiya, is 1/10 scale. And this truck is also marketed as a 1/10 scale vehicle. I would say, I'm trying to measure the width. This is definitely a larger scale than this. So obviously one of these is wrong, and I suspect that it's this one here probably is a little bit incorrect. But if this can be called 1/10 scale, then I think this can be called 1/10 scale as well. And of course, according to Tamiya, as well as RC four-wheel drive, this is a 1/10 scale vehicle, and we can see that there is, again, a bit of a discrepancy. This is noticeably smaller. Perhaps a video trying to figure out what scale something actually is in order. I would say that this is most likely 1/9, and this is probably closer to 1/10 scale. But again, I'm not 100% certain on this. So get this. I put a crystal in here, plug the battery in, turn the remote on. This is just my Airtronics rival right here. It's 27 band. I put the same transmitter crystal in that, and increase the steering rate. Let's try and accelerate. Shall we reverse this? Throttle reversal. Pretty blown away this thing works. Well, I guess, oh God, I gotta take it for a drive now, don't I? Well, this video did not go how I expected it. You know, the truck ran fine. It's nothing spectacular. I think if you handed this radio to, gee, what's the age range of this thing here? I don't know, early double digits, 10-year-old perhaps? That it might be a pretty good car for its era. You give it to a kid today, it's, I don't know, perhaps it's not the style that they're used to anymore. I don't know. You're asking the wrong person about what this generation is into. But like I said, I was pleasantly surprised with how it behaved. It's, you know, a little more responsive than the Nikko Bison, but it's also a lot newer, so the electronics are more updated. It'd be kind of cool to actually drop this chassis under a Nikko Bison and have a little bit more of a modern electronic setup. The question is, of course, is do you want the car? If you're a collector, this is your guy. Not this one here. This one's a wreck and needs everything. But a nice, clean, vintage original, where you're gonna have to look, of course, on both cars is pair tires. These are in good shape. They don't look to have any cracks. One of them has, this one has a little bit of a flat spot on it. But overall, they're, you know, pretty decent shape. This chassis is really nice. I would say this is probably the newest one you're gonna look for. Most likely, you're gonna want the one with the camper shell and these smaller wheels and tires. If you are into collecting these older 1980s, quote unquote, golden era RCs. A collector is probably not going to be into something like this unless it was something that you had as a kid, but for the most part, you'd probably steer clear from this. If you're into something that you want to mess around with, something fairly inexpensive, I would also steer clear. They're not particularly cheap. They're not particularly great to drive. You know, they're just, they're just good enough for what they were. I suspect that if you want this, you either are working on a Bison or you want the body, or you want to modernize it perhaps with more upgraded electronics, or maybe you do just find it for a good deal. If you find this thing for a good price, then I would jump on it. It seems that the going price for these complete operational is around $120, which I think is a bit pricey, but it's that sentimental value. If you've got the sentimental value for either of these, look for them. Again, wheels and tires are important. Electronics probably less so for this one here because you can upgrade it with a little bit of elbow grease. Even for the casual runner, I would steer clear from both of these. They're definitely unique little elements of RC history. Well, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're enjoying these Buyer's Guide series, even though this wasn't supposed to be a Buyer's Guide series and it turned into a Buyer's Guide series. Stay safe and we'll see you soon.